What's going on? Let's do this thing. Right. Facebook is getting ready to let you guys all know I'm here, which is awesome. Thank you, Facebook. And then we will get started in just a moment. So I'll let it do its thing. And yeah, I hate when it freezes and then I don't know what's going on. Okay. All right, I don't know. It's doing its thing. Anyways, hey everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to our monthly training. As I go through today's training, if anything pops up where you're like, man, I wish, especially because we're going to be kind of touching on a lot of different topics. So if anything pops up that you wish that I would go in more in depth in, feel free to let me know, because we could always focus on that for next month or something totally different. But I'm basically just here to create these for you guys. So you let me know what sort of topics you would like covered. If you haven't watched last month's, I think that was really, really helpful. So feel free to hop over to that and give it a watch. And then, yeah, anything that comes up that you think would be helpful, let me know. Hi, Linda. Happy Monday. Thanks for being here. But yeah, this was a request from one of our lovely ladies, and I thought that was a really cool topic. It's not one I would have thought to teach, but when I started creating the content, I was like, wow, this is actually really cool. I am so happy that we are having this conversation. So awesome job. That's why I'm excited for you guys to continue to let me know what you would like me to talk about. Otherwise, I'll just pick random stuff that I think would be helpful, but you guys come up with better ideas anyways. So I like to roll with that. But anyways, let us get into it. So I'm going to briefly just bullet point through what we're going to talk about, and then I'm going to break down each one. So I'm going to kind of rattle them off, so don't feel like you have to like quickly jot down every single one if you're a note taker, because we are going to go into each category separately. But when this question was posed, like, you know, how can we get to the next level in cornhole? And I shared a lot last month about how women specifically can approach cornhole and how there's a big benefit in being female, but we also have to understand the stereotypes that are happening and then use that to be more empowered, and then use our strength as women to help us propel forward even more. So this topic would be really, really cool to help you in your game, but we're going to talk about how it helps you as a professional athlete and also how it helps you just in the industry. So we're going to talk about both ideas. So like I said, I'm going to talk about the different ways that we can use cornhole to get ahead, and then we'll break down each one. So obviously the most, I think, commonly thought of one is to become a professional athlete and attract big sponsors. Obviously, you're going to make money off sponsors and also winnings, and that's probably the one that people are most focused on. But we can do this a number of ways. So we can attract big sponsors with our professional athlete status based purely on talent. You know, you think of someone like a Cheyenne Renner, who's just so elite in her game as a female cornhole player that she's going to attract sponsors just because of her talent. It didn't matter if she was posting on social media. Really, it wouldn't matter if she you know, focused in on a specific topic as an athlete. None of that would really matter because her talent is so elite that people are going to be knocking down her door just because of that alone. On the flip side of that, we have people who can attract big sponsors based on personality. So maybe they're not, you know, the top 10 or top 20 or even the top 50 of pros, but they have big personalities and they're using that personality specifically in the social media space to make a big name for themselves in the industry, even though they might not be doing that purely based on talent. And then it could be based on niche, which I haven't really seen anyone really take advantage of. I'm trying to think if I've seen this. The only thing I could think of is Adrian Johnson kind of does, because he focuses on, I mean, it's a lot of personality, but he also focuses a lot on personal development and positivity and optimism. And you could say that's a niche. But I would recommend even going deeper into the niche, which we'll talk about later today. And then the other way to use cornhole to get ahead would not be specifically focusing on becoming a professional athlete, but more on staying on the Cornhole Ambassador side and building more a brand or platform in the industry. So you like to play cornhole, but maybe you don't want to be a professional athlete, but you really want to be involved in the sport in a big way. and how can you benefit that way? And that would be either obviously creating a business or creating just a personality brand. I would say Girls Throw 2 was the business that I created, obviously left that, focusing more on the personality brand now, although I'd say mine, because I am teaching mindset, and I do have the Cornhole Bootcamp, I am kind of putting a business spin on it, but you don't have to do that. You could purely just be a personality in the sport, if you didn't want to actually create a serious business out of it, right? So my first question to you is, as we go through this list, is what feels the most natural, and what I want to caution you on is choosing something based on somebody else. So like maybe you've watched someone's path or journey and think that sounds really cool, but it's not what's natural to you. So for example, what if you thought, wow, it's so cool how so-and-so has such a great social media presence. I would love to have a social media presence because that sounds cool, but you hate social media. So like, that's obviously not going to be the most natural way for you to go. And we really want to stick with, what's going to make your life feel really full, but not drain you to get there? Or what can you get to without sacrificing so much that you hate life in the interim? It's really important that when we choose goals for ourselves, that we choose goals that are aligned with our most connected, highest authentic self, not what we think sounds good or what somebody else is doing. And if you are going to directly compete with someone, which obviously you would if you became an athlete, but in the business world as well, I just want to caution you on trying to replicate what somebody else is doing, unless you know that you can do it better. Because obviously there are plenty of businesses out there that are doing something that maybe you're looking at and going like, I think that's cool, but man, I feel like I could do that at an even higher level. And so I really think that it would benefit me to jump into that specific space. So think about those kinds of things as we dive into each one of these. So let's start with obviously the talent. So what we do on the boards, and allowing what we do on the boards to dictate our basically ability to get ahead, focusing solely on that, which means that we are going to focus on three things. We're going to obviously practice our mechanics. We're going to sharpen our mental game, and we're going to focus on our health. Now, why those three things? Well, I think the mechanics one is obvious because that's the one that pretty much everybody who's ever had any desire to be a pro focuses on. They think I just have to, put the practice in, put the hours in, put the time on the boards, and I will be elite. And I think that was true for a long time, and potentially maybe true. I don't know. I don't even know if I can say it's true up to this year, but we are definitely moving into territory that will no longer be sufficient. Just practicing on the boards every day, that's going to be a dime a dozen. And so then you have to look at, well, what's going to separate the top from the bottom? And that's when I look at these other two categories, which is working on your mental game. And then I think that one is more recently really being talked about. I couldn't believe the amount of people who bought the Cornhole Bootcamp. I was shocked. I thought, I'd get a handful and that would be cool. And I was happy to create it, and then it could just keep selling for however long I'd want to sell it, and people could benefit from it, and that'd be great. But I never in a million years thought that almost 200 people would sign up for this bootcamp. And I was really excited to see how focused people were on sharpening their mental game. So I think this is talked about more now than it was. But the one that I'm not really hearing anybody talk about is their health. And you have to remember, if you want to be a professional athlete and be elite and attract all of your big sponsors and money opportunities based on your talent, what you're doing on the boards, then you have to look at all three of these categories. It's not going to be enough to just practice outside. You've got to really treat yourself and treat this like a professional sport and like yourself as a professional athlete. And if you look at other sports, people are doing a lot more than just practicing the sport, right? They're going to extreme measures to make sure their bodies are as masterful as they can be in terms of balancing. So if they're doing a lot of hard physical activity, they're going to do a lot of we're talking about the yin yang, like a lot of stretching or rejuvenation type things. Now, we don't have to worry about that as much in cornhole because we aren't like super physically active, but we definitely have to have tip-top health to last an entire tournament. It's exhausting. Just because you're standing there throwing a 1-pound bag does not mean that you do not need endurance, because you do. Also throughout the day, how are you taking care of yourself? We saw just this past weekend at Open number 2, a few people who did not perform well on singles day because of what they chose to do the night before, right? This is not going to be sufficient going forward. It's not going to work. We're going to have to really focus on like this is any other professional sport. And I doubt the whole drinking part of this will remain forever. I don't know how long it's going to take before that goes away, but I just don't see that remaining, forever in this sport because people are taking it too serious. We're also seeing a lot of youth players come in who aren't using those kinds of aids, which means that's where your mental game is going to come in, because if we don't have alcohol to help quiet the mind and come more into the body, then you're going to have to actually learn how to do that yourself. That's a lot of what I focus on is mindfulness, meditation, coming into the body, out of the head, how to quiet the mind when it's, the most busy, and how to do all that when the pressure is on. So if your goal is to get ahead using talent alone, then this is going to be your focus. It's the mechanics I doubt anybody has an issue with, but you've got to sharpen your mental game and you've got to focus on your health. Like, treat this as if you're playing professional football or baseball or basketball, soccer, whatever. If you do this, you'll be ahead of the curve, because I think the majority of the sport is not focusing on the health part yet. There's very few that are. So if you started doing that now, you would automatically start to rise to the top, just because. And the mental game too, even though I don't think any pros, like maybe a handful of pros bought the boot camp, but it's mostly, regular players, not pros buying this, which means you're going to start to see the people who are focusing on their mental game and their health pull ahead. You just are. Now, the only thing that is going to get in the way of that is the confidence, which we talked a lot about last month. You have pros. If you're a big name, you already feel like you've got this in the bag, and that's going to take you really, really far, versus the person who walks up the boards that has no experience beating really elite players, even if they are working on all of these things. But aside from that, if you can master the confidence, which is part of the mental game, you are going to be extremely, extremely elite at this sport, because it's just we're ahead of it if we start doing it now. So if you're good at teaching, you can also add in things like coaching and workshops and clinics for extra income. But I really stress that if you're good at teaching part, because just because you're good at cornhole does not mean you can teach. Those are technically separate. So it's something to think about if teaching is a skill that you have, and if you have found yourself able to really help people learn how to play cornhole and improve their game. This is a great opportunity to be able to exercise that and make extra income, once again, just based on talent alone. Although I guess I would argue it's talent plus a teaching talent, but you know what I mean. So in terms of getting ahead on the purely talent basis, those are the things that I would focus on if that were my goal. That is not my goal, and that is why I do not put a lot of time into mechanics. I do put a lot of time into my health and my mental health because I like to, but I will never be elite at cornhole because I don't put any time into practicing mechanics. I just play at my club once a week, maybe twice, and that's it. So I don't have any expectations to be elite. And if I did, that'd be a little bit crazy. But yeah, so let me know if you guys have any questions about that first option. You're watching on the replay. I can see your comments whenever you're watching it, so feel free to add in your questions and comments because I will see them after the fact, but I will see them. All right, let's move on. The next way is based on your personality or niche. I'm kind of combining those into one and calling it the off the board strategy. So this is, okay, I want to be a professional athlete. I want to, be a pro, but I don't know if I really want to focus so hard on being like the top 10, but I want to use the foundation and the name of being a pro and spin that to my favor in other ways, which there's nothing wrong with that. You still have to be elite because you still have to be, one of the top 256 in the world, but you don't have to necessarily be the top 10 of the 256. This is where social media is going to come into play. If you want to attract sponsors off the boards, then you have to impress them off the boards. Social media is going to be your best way to do that. So choose one that feels natural to you and that you like. And then you would want to create a content calendar. You have to take this serious. If this is the crazy thing about a lot of cornhole players right now who are wanting sponsors, is the way they're approaching asking for sponsorships is a little bit crazy. I mean, I don't know who on earth would, outside of the cornhole industry, that already knows you, right? So if you already have a name in this industry, that's one thing. But if you want to step out of the cornhole industry and attract sponsors outside of this small circle, you cannot just say, hey, sponsor me, I'm good at cornhole. Like, that's never going to work. You have to work for those sponsorships. You have to show your value. And whether that's, these are all my accomplishments and how many times I've been on TV, and this is why that benefits you, and these are how many viewers we have, and putting together a deck like that, which I know the ACL does provide, with all the stats and everything, that's one way. But another way would be to show how serious you take your brand, right? So if you have a content calendar and you're like, this is what I put out, every month, I'm always constantly posting. I would do a feature on you, once a week minimum. I would, feature an unboxing of an item for you, like once a month. Like, I mean, put it together, create something, show your value for these big brands and how you're going to help make them money. Because at the end of the day, this has to make them money. There has to be an ROI. Otherwise, why would they invest? So if they see, oh, wow, if I invest, $5,000 into this person, here's all the ways they're going to give that back to me. And here's how I can see that making me money. Now, if you're trying to pick someone who just needs brand awareness, that might be easy to sell because you're like, hey, I can get your brand in front of a bunch of people, like purely just based on, standing there and playing cornhole. But those companies tend to have the least amount of money because they're trying to get their name out. So they probably don't have a big budget. Now, if you take big companies with big budgets, you take a mass, let's just say you went after like Pizza Hut or something, or Subway, take it from Happy Gilmore. That company has tons of money to throw out at sponsors, but now you need to show them why you're valuable and how you're going to make them their money back. And this is where I think you take it serious. Like, you show how you're going to use social media and treat social media like a job. And then collaborate with other people. If you want to grow your social media platform, the fastest way to do that is to collaborate. Build those relationships with people that you can say, hey, I would love to do a collaboration, like you share this and I share this for you, or we can do a giveaway where they have to like my page and your page. Like, build the relationship, especially in the cornhole industry. Everyone's so accessible right now. That's not going to be the way it is forever, but it is right now. It's easy to build relationships with important people that, especially like if you're an advanced player, or obviously if you're a pro player, like approach these brands and say, like, look, this is what I want to do. I want to do a clinic, or I want to do a workshop, or I want to do a drop of merch, and here's how I want to do it, and here's how it would grow your following and mine, and here's how it would make us both money, and come up with a plan and show them how you can help them. And I promise you, they'll take it more serious. But if you just blankly put out, like, looking for sponsors, I'm a cornhole player and I could get on ESPN perhaps, it's just not going to work. And I don't even think it's going to work in the cornhole industry very soon. It is at the moment, but I don't know if that's going to work for very much longer, because these cornhole companies are realizing they're pouring all these dollars into these players and they're not getting the ROI back because the players are not treating it like a business, and they're not working up to get those sponsors their money back. And the more you do that, the more those sponsors are going to want to keep you every single year. Like, this chick made me money. This chick hustled. She was out there and talking about the brand and going out of her way to create in creative ways to help build this business and this platform. So you're going to have to become masterful at the social media platform you choose. Like, you can't just be like, well, I post sometimes and I don't know if I'm doing it right. Like, you're going to have to invest time and money and energy into figuring out, like, how does this social media platform work? If it's, for example, Instagram, looking at how reels work and how easy it is to get views on reels, especially if you choose certain songs that are trending or certain hashtags that are trending. Like, you're going to have to do some effort there, some research, if you don't already know how to use them, or hire someone that does. That's totally an option. Now, you can turn this into an offline strategy and focus on your local area. So if you're cringing at the idea of having to do social media You can use this strategy in an offline way. I remember when I was helping yoga teachers grow their businesses, a lot of them really hated social media. Like, it was kind of a yoga teacher thing. They really just want to be with people, be in studios with people, interact with people live. They don't like the online thing. They don't like the disconnection of it, or the sort of wall that it puts up. And so I really had to work with them on, okay, if you're not going to do social media, which you don't have to, this is your life, your business, you do it the way you want. But that does mean you're going to have to do some more like grassroots kind of strategies in your local area. So that means you're going to have to start booking yourself on news segments or radio stations or appearances or workshops, or walking into local businesses, like, door to door, and introducing yourself and saying, here's what can I put a flyer up, and here's what I want to do, and are you interested in sponsoring, and here's how I could help your business. I'll do a workshop next week and say sponsored by, Pizza Hut or whatever. So you're going to have to be a little bit more creative, and it could totally work in person. It's just, once again, have to put effort into that. So if we look at some of the benefits of each one, online, you're going to have to become masterful at social media, be consistent with social media. You're going to have to engage with people online. You're definitely going to have to get comfortable in front of a phone or camera, and willing to engage with people in person. Like, if you start to build a big presence online and then they come see you in person, they're going to want to say like, hey, Sally, it was like, I totally follow your Instagram. I love you. And you have to be comfortable with the fact that now these conversations will happen. The offline, you got to be heavily involved with your local area. You got to pitch yourself to news stations and radio stations and local businesses for talks, and you have to be comfortable speaking in front of live audiences. Like, either way, if you want visibility, you got to be visible. You got to get out there and make sure people see you. Like I said, if you want to be beneficial to a company on the boards, then you just have to be pouring every ounce of your energy into making you and your body elite. If you want to balance that and not have to focus so much on that, then you have to pour that time and energy into building a platform that you can then use to benefit these businesses. Either one of those strategies or a combination of both will help you get big sponsors. But that needs to happen. And when we're talking about getting ahead in cornhole, the sponsors are going to be huge. And when I say sponsors, I mean, I'm talking ACL too. If you are killing it on the boards and you're beating everybody, your name, you will be seen by the ACL, as well as if you are huge on social media in the cornhole world, you will also be seen by the ACL. So both of these things help. Also, I will say that when it comes to the ACL choosing their pros based on like application, things like that, they're always looking at who's traveling, who's going, who's leaving their local area, because they don't put a lot of weight on someone who's really good in their one area. If you haven't left your area to prove that you can beat people in other regions, they don't take it very serious, even if you maybe could. So it is going to take that time. And so that all comes back to sponsors, right? Because if you're going to need to travel around and be seen and be visible, unless you have a lot of capital to sponsor that for yourself, you got to raise funds. And this is how we can do that. So it all comes back to traveling and being seen. And so those two things I would really focus on to get ahead, and you could do it rather quickly if you really do put that time and energy into it. All right, now let's kind of flip to the other side, which is, let's assume you didn't want to be a pro, or you want to do something in the interim while you're building your skill before you become a pro. And in this sense, talking about the idea of building some kind of business in the industry. Obviously, what are you passionate about aside from cornhole, or that you can combine with cornhole? I mean, what other talents do you have? What have people asked you to do? This has been really helpful for me to figure out where I can help people, is instead of trying to ask myself, like, what do I want to teach or what do I want to deliver? I wait until people start asking me. Like, the reason why I created the Cornhole Bootcamp is because I had at least 3, 4, maybe 5 people at Worlds come up to me and say like, hey, what can I do to help with the nerves? Or what can I do? My mindset's off, or I really need to do something, my mindset's off. And I was like, all right, that's enough people for me to sit down and go, okay, let me, because otherwise I have to answer each individual question or be like, I can't help you and here's my fee. And I don't want to do that either. So I was like, I need to create a program because these questions keep coming and I need to be able to answer them in a way that really helps people. Hence, the Cornhole Bootcamp was born from those questions. And so sometimes you'll find people ask you things and then it's like, okay, I keep getting asked this question for some reason or around this topic. So what could I do to create a business out of this? Not like a full, you don't have to be like, the next huge brand, but just meaning how could you create something that you could charge people for? And just so notice some of that. And then once again, don't compete with anyone, really stay in your lane. There's really no reason to compete with everyone. There's room for everybody. But if you see a really cool idea, it might be, you might find yourself going like, oh, I want to create that same thing. And like I said earlier, unless you look at that and go, wow, there are some huge holes in what they're doing, and I know that I could do that better. That's one thing. But aside from that, I would really try to stay in your lane and say, with my uniqueness, how can I show up and do something really powerful in this industry that nobody's really done before, or at least hasn't done it with my unique spin? And then once again, build those relationships. If you want to build a big business in this industry, you've got to build relationships. You've got to network. You've got to meet people. Because the cool thing about this industry right now is that people are super happy and willing to collaborate. Like, I have never had a pro tell me no to come on a podcast or interview. I've never had a business tell me no to collaborate. Like, everyone is really willing to work together. I mean, under, reasonable circumstances. So we're at this really cool time when, this is not all going to be this accessible forever. And then one thing that nobody told me when I started my first business, which was when I was 23, so this is many years ago, and I did not know this, that when you build a business and you put yourself out there, it's like, it's kind of like when you have kids, like where your kids become your little mirrors and you're like, okay, I really didn't need to know all of this about myself. Like, I was not prepared to have all of my most negative flaws just like shoved in my face from my children, but here it is. So it's kind of like that with entrepreneurship. When you start to put yourself out there, any like skeletons in the closet or the shit you haven't worked on or triggers, all of that will show up. And so I just caution you to make sure you're working on yourself and building your leadership skills so that you're ready for what's coming. Because if not, you might find yourself curled up in the fetal position in the corner of your office. So, it's really important to put the equal amount of energy you would put into building your business, into building yourself. And then focus on giving while honoring your value. And what I mean by that is, this industry, especially, like I would say it's true about every industry, but because I've been in quite a few different industries now, what I've noticed about cornhole is if you try and be at even a little bit, I don't want to say sleazy, but like if you're not focused on giving, this industry will chew you up. Like, they are so quick to be like, how dare you ask for money? Now, I think overboard, because I think that there's plenty of instances when we should be asking for money when the cornhole people get a little bit crazy about it. But I will say that if you're just entering the space and you're in a taking kind of way, like, hey, I've got this thing and it costs this much, go do it. Like, it's not going to land well. You've really got to focus on giving first and being like, here's what I would love to help with, and here's what I can help with, and here's what I'd love to deliver. And you really got to focus on that giving. Now, I will put that strong boundary, though, of honoring your value. And an example of this is when I put out the Cornhole Bootcamp, I only made it $30. I did that because first of all, it's worth so much more than $30. However, I wanted to, at least in this first launch of it, really give, but of course I still put a lot of time and energy into it. So I'm not going to do it for free. Plus, nobody would take it serious if it were free. So I put a really small price tag on it so that it was easily accessible for everybody. However, I had a person, for example, message me and say like, hey, would you mind like looking through my stuff and giving me feedback? It's like, all right, well, that is where I would charge for my time, right? Because if you want me to individually evaluate what's happening for you, I have 170 people in this boot camp. I can't possibly do that for everybody. So I need to put a boundary there of if you want extra time, then this is the cost of that extra time. But the boot camp is there for you. And I have, group sessions and things like that to help you, so that in case you don't have extra money, that you still can get support. But this is where I honor my value of my time. And so this is where the price comes, right? And this is, and not a small price. Like when it comes to my individual time, I do charge quite a bit. And that's because I don't want to work with that many people individually. So like, okay, so I love working in groups and I make my groups very affordable for that reason. So you want to focus on giving, and that's more of an energetic thing. Like, and for example, when it all comes down to it, yes, I want to receive money for my time because it's a business and because I value my time and I would get burnt out if I didn't. But at the end of the day, like all I want to do is help people. And I don't want to do it for free because it doesn't benefit myself or the people if they don't have any kind of money exchange. But that's what it's about for me. And if any part of you is not coming from that energy, people will sense it and smell it, and it will not go well. So just make sure that you're truly in a place of giving, and then have boundaries in place so that nobody takes advantage of your generosity, if you will. And then let's talk about the kind of other side of this, which would be to not necessarily build a business, but build a personality brand. So you don't have to deliver anything. You could just be you, kind of like an influencer model, right? Except that you're in a specific industry and you are doing your specific thing, right? You're like, I'm a cornhole player, and then I have this, platform that I do my thing on, and you can come hang out with me while I do it, basically. You're just sharing your life with the world and bringing them along that journey. People love reality TV. They love this stuff. It is important that you're consistent with your audience engagement. If you're just posting stuff and you're never in the comments and your DMs responding and interacting with them, it's not going to last very long. You're not going to get a lot of followers or engagement on your posts. So if you do want to build this kind of brand, then you got to be with the people, connect to people as much as possible. And that starts with an authentic connection to yourself, meaning you can't really connect with people in a deep and powerful way if you have not spent the time first connecting to yourself. That has to happen first. You have to be comfortable with yourself. You have to be willing to be yourself without editing. You just got to be you without apology, and then see who comes to hang out with you. And then think about how your action and words can influence others. And I know this can be confusing with what I just said, because I said not to edit yourself. And I don't want you to ever edit your values and things that are important to you. But we also have to realize that when we are in a position of influence, that our actions and words do influence people. We just want to make sure that we're showing up in a way that we feel congruent about and that we feel good about. And then we're never going to attract everybody. We're always going to have haters, and we're always going to have people that don't agree with us. And that's totally fine. We're not trying to please everybody. But we just want to make sure that we're never, intentional, that we're a little bit more intentional with what we do, because we are looking to build a platform. And then do some digging into your own needs and ego. What I mean by this is when we want to be visible, and I do think that at some level, everybody wants to be visible, whether you just want to be visible to your friends or your family members, or on a stage or on social media, whatever. We all want to be seen and heard and honored and appreciated. That's human needs. However, if you have the desire to be seen and visible on an even bigger level, like on a more mass appeal level, then before you do that, and I think we could take a little note out of a lot of celebrities' books, before you do that, just check in with yourself that this is not coming from some sort of dysfunction or unmet need. Because if you're like, I want to be, appreciated and loved and seen by everybody because my parents didn't ever give that to me, that's going to be a dysfunctional situation. So you look about, let's use the word famous. If you have the desire to be known or famous, you look at a lot of these famous people who have that desire. If that desire is bigger than their desire to be masterful at their craft, it usually doesn't go well. And it usually happens with child celebrities. You see them usually go off the rails because they don't have the tools to be able to even deal with what's happening, because it's a lot of ego stroking and things like that, and digging up stuff in you that is not yet dealt with. So just do a check-in, like, what is this about? Why is it important for you to be moving up in this industry, to be seen in this industry, or whatever it is that your goals are? Why is that important to you? And if you are noticing there's some stuff there, and I would assume that would be the case for just about everybody. I know that it always is for me. I can always find more as I'm digging, like, oh, that's an interesting one that's hanging out in the background. What's that about? Just be careful. There is, I come from the coaching industry, and there's a lot of coaches that are creating big brands in the coaching world out of a very, very vulnerable wound, right? Like they didn't get enough love, or they didn't get enough approval or enough appreciation, or they weren't seen enough. And then so they step out into this coaching world and they have a bunch of clients that adore them and fawn over them and tell them they're great. And then it meets that need in a very codependent and dysfunctional way. And you see a lot with like, influencers and celebrities and things like that, when you're doing it for the wrong reasons, and not wrong as in like you morally, ethically are doing it for the wrong reasons, but you just haven't yet looked at where it's even coming from. You might meet goals, but it's not going to meet your ultimate goals of feeling the way you want to feel. So I like to just explore, like, why do you want to be a professional athlete? Why do you want to be elite at this game? Why do you potentially want a brand or a business in this? Like, what is it about? Where is it all coming from? What's the ultimate goal? Because when I've done this digging, I found some stuff in there that is unpleasant and that I had to work with. And I've also found some really cool stuff about myself, about my really big desire to serve and what that's about. And so I think you could find both in there, but it's important that we at least open the door and take a little peek and make sure that, we're working with everything that's going on there. So with all that, choose what fuels you. It's really important, like I said, that you choose the thing that actually activates you. When I do these talks, I do them once a month, or at least this is my second one, but I've done this in the weight loss industry for years. And there's a point in which I'm delivering these kinds of talks, and I'm asking people, what do you want to learn about with food and weight and body? And I'm doing them. And there's a point when I'm like, all right, I'm feeling like I'm doing so much of this and getting nothing in return. And that's when I know that it's no longer fueling me. Like I'm giving too much and asking for too little, which doesn't mean I have to ask for more. It just means I have to do a little less. So there's always going to be this point when you find like, this is fueling, but now this is draining. Like, so find those points in what you want to do where you're still feeling fueled and that you're not feeling drained. And then think about the long-term results. Like if you, for example, if you hate social media, do not choose a strategy that requires social media, because you're going to have to do it forever. It's not going away, right? I talk about this a lot with the weight loss industry. People choose these plans to lose weight they don't like, don't enjoy, don't want to do forever, but they tell themselves, I just have to do it for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and then I'll have what I want and I can do something else. That's not the truth at all. It's not true for weight, and it's not true for this. So think about the long-term results. What do you want your life to look and feel like? And what about what we've talked about, or even what I haven't talked about, would fit into that for you? For example, if you want to be a pro, it's a lot of travel, and this is something I thought about when I told the ACL that I wanted to be a sideline reporter. I'd already thought about the fact that if I take this job, if I present this to them and they say yes, I'm going to have to travel a lot. And am I prepared for that? And, that was something I had to discuss with my husband. Like, what would that look like if I'm gone 2-3 weekends out of every month? Is that something we're prepared to do? Like, really think about the long-term results and what that would look and feel like as a life for you, and then create the life that you want. I don't care what anyone else's life looks like. And do not look at someone else's life on social media and think that's the life that you want. You have your life in front of you. Create it the way you want it. And like I said, if you're like, I really don't want to travel that much, then figure out how you can work in the cornhole industry without having to travel that much. There's always a solution. But be honest with yourself about what it is that you want, because the traditional path right now with cornhole is a lot of traveling. So if that's what you want, then you need to know that going into it, or get creative and think of another way to do it. So my exercise for you guys is to write out all your big dreams and then focus on how you want to feel. We get really stuck in the having, like, I want to have this and I want to have that and I want to, this and that. And that's all totally normal. And I think it's really important to understand what those are. I just want you to chase that thought a little bit further than just what you want to have. So example, I want to be a professional cornhole player because, which would make me feel. So you're just chasing that thought a little bit farther. Why is that important to you? Where's that desire coming from? I don't believe that we all have the same desires, and I believe every desire we have is meant to be true. Otherwise, why would we have it? But the only asterisk I have to that is if we have desires coming out of dysfunction or wounds, then that may not be a true desire. And it may just be like, oh shit, now that I'm actually looking at it, that's just like my desperate need to be liked. And that's where it's coming from. And so I need to really look at what that desire is a little bit closer. I know that's been some of mine in the past. So what is it that you want to feel, and why is this connected to the goal that you have? And then look for any dysfunctional or wounded logic and address it immediately. So why do I want what I want? I don't think this is a question that everybody asks themselves. I think we get caught up in like for example, with a celebrity, like, well, why wouldn't I want to be famous? Like, doesn't that everyone, wouldn't everyone want to be famous? Like, what a crazy question. But like, no, like that means that, you lose privacy, and there's all these other things that go along with it. So why do you want what you want? Why is it important to you? How would it make you feel to have it? How do you want to feel at the end of the day? And all of that good stuff. So really dive deep into that. And then based on what we talked about today, you can try some of the strategies that I mentioned, or maybe it triggered some other ideas in you that I haven't thought of and didn't talk about, because I definitely don't know everything. And I bet you have fantastic ideas that I didn't talk about at all. So let this sort of spark some creativity on how you want to interact in this industry. And then as women, we can really make a wave. There's a lot of opportunity for us right now because it is male dominated, which I know sometimes sounds like a negative thing, but it is 100% positive because it's way easier to stand out as a female right now. So when you're thinking about sponsors, think about sponsors that focus on women, right? Because the men can't go after those sponsors. Think about businesses that support women. Think about podcasts you can go on that are about women. Think about shows you can go on that are about women. Like, use your female angle. As a cornhole player, I don't care if you're a pro or not. It doesn't even matter. Just go start marketing yourself to women-based things as a female, whatever you want to call yourself, and use those opportunities because they're right here for you. All right, that's all I got for my stuff. If you guys have questions, please post them in the chat, whether you're here with me live or on the replay later. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Also, if you have any ideas of a topic for next month, let me know. I did have somebody reach out to me and say they were interested to learn more about how I sort of approach, this sort of psychological approach to weight and health. I don't want to ever push that topic on you guys because this is a cornhole group, but if anybody else wants that topic, I'm happy to do that topic or something else completely. So you guys let me know what would be helpful for you, and we can go from there. But yeah, let me know. I don't know if you can hear my dog snoring in the background, but that's awesome. Okay, how do you explore whether or not you are doing things for the wrong reasons? It's that's a journaling exercise, Kristen, right? So it's just why do I want this? You and I talked about this before, and I told you, like, I always wonder that about myself. Like, why do I have this big desire to be seen and visible and big stages and all of that? And of course, at some point I asked myself, like, is this an ego thing? Am I just like needing to be, have my ego stroked by people? But what I realized was, and I know I told you this, and you actually told me this, but that it's really about being able to serve a massive audience. So there's a couple things I'll say about it. One, if you have the desire to be really, really, really visible, that is not a desire everybody has. So just from jump, you have to assume that there's a lot of truth to that. And so I would say that the desire is always correct, and it should be brought into fruition, because there's a slew of people that have no desire to be seen and on big stages like that. So that's number one. And then, so it's not really about like, is this a true desire of mine, or is this desire coming from dysfunction necessarily? It's just, how can I stay grounded in the space that's best for me when I'm on this path to something that can take people into a space of ego and dysfunction. It's like people, I would assume that like artists and celebrities and people who are famous start off with like, I love this art and this craft, and this whole celebrity fame thing is an awesome bonus. And then I think as it happens, it's like, because they're not grounded enough, it flips. I think of someone like Billie Eilish, and I was watching, what's it called? The Carpool Karaoke or whatever. I could not believe, like, Billie Eilish, and this was years ago, but she was still huge back then. And she's living in her same home that she lived in her whole life, in her bedroom with her parents. And I think that's an amazing way to stay grounded. So for me, what I love being around my friends and family because they keep me grounded. Like my son does not think that I'm anything cool or special beyond just mom. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure he thinks I'm a special mom, but you know what I mean? Like he's not like, you know, saying that I'm anybody other than that to him. And kids are a great way to do that, to keep you grounded. But even friends and family, like especially friends and family not in the cornhole industry, right, who have absolutely no tie to this, it's really easy. It's like they have no clue what's going on in this world for me, and that's great because it makes me stay really grounded. So I guess my answer to your question, if this is all helpful, is that if you're having the desire, I'm sure the desire is right, but it's just a matter of staying on track with the real reason you're doing it. So it's coming back continuously to, and this is because of whatever, right? Whatever your reasoning is. You know, just is because I have some universal divine desire stuck in me that I have to go out there and talk about shit that apparently I can't help but talk about, like no matter if I want to or not. I can't help it. It just happens. So I don't know if that's helpful. Let me know. Yeah, I know. I know you do, Kristen. I know. Travel and being seen, I get, but what is ACL specifically looking for the podium win? For the podium win? I mean, that's just, I'm not sure if I quite understand your question, Linda, but the only thing I will say is they're looking for people who travel and then are active on social media. Like there's really nothing else. Oh, well, I guess being an ambassador, and I think it's a common sense one, but being an ambassador for the sport, like obviously if you are out there trying to push the agenda of cornhole to the world, that's going to be awesome. But how would they know that unless you're being public and seen and active and loud about that? So I guess no matter what you're doing, it always comes back to how are you presenting what you're doing so that the ACL or whoever or sponsors can see that you're doing that. And that's where I think social media comes into play a lot. You know, or if you're doing offline strategies, then it's going to be news segments and radio stations, things like that, where you're getting the word out of what you're doing. But in terms of what they're looking for, like as being kind of a fly on the wall when they're looking at applications, if that's what you're asking, Linda, they're looking at your social media presence, your how much you've traveled, and of course how you performed when you traveled, and then how and how you present yourself. So like, are you getting into arguments in addicted to cornhole? You know, like, are you putting super political posts out that are very polarizing and you know, can turn off a certain audience? So like basically, how are you showing up as a professional athlete before you even have the job? That's going to be things that they look at because you're going to represent them. So you have to show before you have basically their job that you would be the best employee, so to speak, for the job. And that's going to be how you present yourself to the world, both on the boards and off the boards, offline, online. And so if you're never leaving your town, then they can't see what you're doing. If you never post on social media, then they don't know what you're doing. So that's why those two, it always comes back to those. But yeah, I guess what's underneath all of that would be just really being an amazing ambassador for the sport and a great role model and presenting yourself as a professional athlete. I don't know if that answers your question, Linda, but let me know. Oh, good. Awesome. Any other questions? Networking. Yep, networking is huge. Got to meet them. And that's the cool thing about where we're at right now, is that it's so easy to meet them. I mean, you have, you know, the people who look at the applications, like a Trey Ryder and the rest of the committee, are typically sitting right there at the events. Like you can go introduce yourself at any point and meet them. You know, it's not difficult right now. I don't know that's how it'll always be, but you know, we met so many, I mean, the first open I ever went to, which was in Austin last year. I don't know, it's all blending together. Anyways, I of course met a lot of pros there, and I just introduced myself to them, and we became such close friends like pretty quickly. It just happens quite easily in this kind of community, right? It's been huge. Like when I wanted to do my cornhole boot camp, I just messaged Ryan and said, "Hey Ryan, you want to do this boot camp together?" And he was like, "Sure." So it was that easy, right? Because we had a friendship. One of you aren't very good at the sport, but you're a hell of a brand sport ambassador, right? That's kind of me, Kristen. So that's when you have to kind of go back to where do you see yourself kind of fitting in to, I guess, what do you want? Like, do you want to be part of the ACL team in some way? Do you want to be making money off of cornhole some way? Like, it kind of depends on like, all right, I know that I love cornhole and I want the whole world to know how awesome cornhole is. And I don't necessarily want to be a pro, but I just want everybody to know how awesome this sport is. Then you just have to ask yourself, how do you want to accomplish that? Do you want to be someone, for example, who has a business where you help people get started in cornhole? Okay, well, then that's one way to do it. Do you want to be a commentator because you love talking about cornhole? Then that's one thing. So you're just kind of going to look at where do you want to focus that energy, because there's a million different ways you could spread that love of cornhole. And it could be at the ACL level, but it can have nothing to do with that. And it could just be you doing your own little business and doing your own thing, or even just posting your videos of you playing and building an audience and then getting sponsorship money because you're just, you have a big following and you're posting a lot. And so you're just got a nice audience of people that people can sell to, right? Like an influencer type model. So it's like, what do you like? Like that doesn't work for me because I'm horrible at having my phone on me. So like at the beginning I was like, ooh, I'll be like a personality brand where like I just like take people on my journey of life with me. And then I'm like, oh, I haven't used my phone once this entire weekend. I didn't document anything I'm doing. And so nobody has any idea what I'm doing. Or I'll be like, oh, I'm going to record. Like before I was like, oh, I'm going to like always tell people what I eat so they know, because I teach, weight and food. And then I would like do one meal. And then I'm not the type of person that has my phone on me a lot. Like it's never going to work. I cannot live that kind of lifestyle, as cool as that sounds. To be able to bring people into my life and have them join me, it's just not realistic unless I like hired someone to follow me around with a camera, because I'm just never going to do it. So that's when I was like, well, that angle is not going to work. So let's go ahead and transition to a different angle. And that's when I realized, like, if I can just post videos when I feel like it that help people with their mindset, like that's the most natural way for me to use a platform. And then there's no effort for me, because when I feel like talking about it, I just record it. But that's a different strategy, right? Do you know if ACL looks at conferences that have a low pro status and see if they can help strengthen those areas? I know they look at, if you're talking about the application, Linda, they look at everything. But when I've heard I've heard some of these conversations and between some of the committees, and I always hear them say like, yeah, they're good here, but they haven't left that area. That's why I keep coming back to travel, because it's like, even if you have great conference finishes, or whatever you're trying to get visibility in your local area, people are always like, oh, this person is, watch out for this person, like if they're in that area, because that's the person that is the best in that area. And they hear it, but they don't give it much weight. They don't give it much weight until they're showing up at opens and traveling and beating. Like if you go to an open and move through that field, even if you don't win, but you make it far in that field, that's when you get noticed, because you've stepped outside. Even if that open is in your area, it's brought people from all different areas to that open. So if that's how you start to be seen, when Emily Downer came and played with Jimmy Humans at that one open and they won, that was huge for her. Like I didn't know who she was prior to that, but I guarantee everybody in her conference knew who she was and knew she was amazing, but I had never heard of her before. And immediately, as soon as she did that, I reached out to her and was like, you got to come on the podcast. That was amazing. And the ACL, put her on their radar. Now they're starting to watch what's Emily Downer doing every time, like where even her local stuff, what's she doing? So it is really, really helpful to, you got to go to an open, and you got to start beating people who are not in your area only, to be seen. And the cool thing about being a female is we have the female events. And if you're beating, you know, Rosie Streaker, Sam Finley, Kaylee Hunter, like if you're beating those ladies, like you are going to be noticed, because those are huge names in the women's division. So you can do that by going to an open. And I definitely, you know, once the schedule is released, I would look at it and go, okay, what opens can I get to? And preemptively, I would be looking at the other things we talked about and how can I get sponsor money to help me get to these opens, right? But you got to make a splash, because I list out those conference events and not qualifiers, state championships every week on Around the ACL. And half the time when I'm reading those names, I was even asking Trey, like, do you know how to pronounce this name? He's like, I don't know. So like they don't, those names are not known to them until they step out into those opens. Yeah, no, you are, Kristen, you're in a very challenging place. But the stupid thing is that even if you beat all those guys, no, that's not true, because if you were at a conference, for example, Kristen, and you took down Jordan Power and all those amazing people in the Great Lakes Conference, and then I know for a fact that they would take note to that, just because those players are not just pros, they're top pros, which has a lot of weight if you move through them, for sure. So I would think, like, you know, so if we're announcing the, you know, whatever conference or some local thing, and ACL does pay attention to social media. So like if you were, you know, Kristen beats, you know, all these people at this event, like they're gonna see that for sure. But yeah, you're in a tough one for sure. Hey, you never know. You know, I mean, let me put it this way. You could beat them if you wanted to and put the time, energy, and effort into it. You just don't want to that bad, which is fine. I feel the same way. So that would take a lot of practice and a lot of attention and energy into other things to become that elite. You don't have to want that. That's cool. I definitely do not. So I'm with you there. What else? Any other questions? Any other thoughts or ideas of what we could, or what you would like to be discussed for next month? And you don't have to say it right now, you know, come back and comment anytime, because it won't be until, you know, somewhere in mid-November. But if anything comes up that you would like, then that'd be great. Mental game, what books you recommend? That's going to be the book Choke. I think I actually have it right here. Best book I've read. Hold on, this is in my way. There we go. Okay, Choke by Cian, I don't even know how you say her name, Belloc. What the Secrets of the Brain Reveal About Getting It Right When You Have to, is an amazing, amazing book. She talks specifically about sports, but also academics and things like that, and what gets in the way of, or what makes us choke when we are under pressure. So that's one of my favorite books. And then like in general with the mental game, like not necessarily specifically to the sport of cornhole. I love anything by Wayne Dyer. Specifically, there's a book called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life that I absolutely adore, and was super helpful for me. And man, I have read probably 1,000 books on mindset. It's really difficult to even come up with all of them. There's another one. The something is the way. What is the oh, it's gonna bother me. I'll put it in the group when I remember it. Something like the something is the way, the hurdle is the way, God, it's gonna drive me crazy. Anyways, I'll remember it and put it in there for you. Yeah, what is that? I don't know. Anyways, Penny says, I'm in the Great Lakes Conference too, but we're not close enough to play that great group. Just at conferences and opens, playing will make you a better player. Have fun with it. It's true. Drinking and cornhole. Yeah. Oh man. Like I said, I don't know how much longer that's going to be a thing. Look, here's why drinking's great. Well, drinking and cornhole. I mean, I like to drink in general, don't get me wrong, but here's why drinking and cornhole is so great is because when you drink, it enhances your sensations. It's easier for you to notice the body, like you start to feel kind of like tingly and like, you know, like, so like if for a lot of us who have a difficult time connecting to the body and sensation, it's helpful to feel something and then be like, oh, here's the body. And so that is one reason. And the other reason is because it can easily shut off your mind. But the reason it shuts off your mind is because it's numbing. And this is the biggest single difference in why I think it's going to be a huge disadvantage when the majority of people stop drinking while they play. And that's because when people start embracing mindfulness or true techniques that help you become more present, not more numb, because both presence and numbness can decrease the thoughts in the brain, right? So if you are numb, you don't have many thoughts and feelings, but then also if you're super present and aware, those thoughts and feelings don't last or have major impact or reactions. So like you're like, oh, I'm noticing that anger and there it goes, no big deal. Whereas numbness is I'm not even going to allow the anger to be there. So you that's kind of the philosophy on how that can be beneficial. But on the flip side of that, obviously there are a lot of people who drink and get enraged or get sappy, and so like it can do the opposite effect, number one. And then number two, it's really a numbing agent. And so you will not be able to play your best forever numb. Now, especially like I said, as people start coming in and not doing it, it's going to show. Now, the thing is that if you're comparing people who have no mental game and no training in mindfulness versus someone who's drunk, not hammered, but like buzzed, the buzzed person will probably do better because at least they're not dealing with all the shit happening in their head. Whereas the person who doesn't have the training is like, they're having like a million thoughts and feelings and things and all of it's bubbling up and they're falling apart during the pressure. Whereas the person that's had a few drinks is not. So if you're comparing those two things, then yes, the person who has been drinking is going to be performing better. But like I said, once people start to realize like, wow, I think, you know, mindfulness is probably really important for my game. And if anyone's in the boot camp, week 3 of the boot camp is meditation every day. Once people start realizing how majorly impactful it is to meditate, and in the boot camp, I gave 2 meditations that I recorded specifically for cornhole, one that you listen to in the morning and one that you listen to right before you play. And I had several people reach out to me and say, oh my God, when I listened to that meditation, it was like, it dramatically changed my game. Like, yeah, of course, that's what it does, right? Like, that's the point. So super impactful. So to talk about drinking and cornhole, just know that if that is your crutch, it's eventually not going to work for you, because people are going to start to realize like, wow, if I don't drink, but I'll really work on my mental game and my mindfulness and presence and awareness, they're just going to be better. They're just going to be better. It's the way it is. Losing Control is a good podcast about the yips. Awesome. Thank you, Samantha. I also found a really cool podcast and I put it in the group. I put her name in the group. And I'm just looking up what the podcast is actually called. It's called Holistic Trauma Healing. And this is really good because she talks all about the nervous system. And if you guys want to be elite, you better understand your nervous systems, because that's what's going to cause choking is dysregulated nervous system. And so that is definitely something to look into, is what's going on there. All right, let's see. I just lost that last comment. I don't know where it went. Where did it go? I saw it and now it's gone. Okay, Facebook. I'm not really sure why you did that. Where did it go? Oh well, I don't know where it went. So yeah, paying attention to your nervous system, understanding how the nervous system works, all of that is going to be really important to understand why something is happening when it's happening. Like, you know, how come every time I get to this point, this happens? You know, this is your nervous system. Your nervous system is responsible for everything automatic in the body, everything. And so if we don't start to look at, and we want cornhole to be automatic, right? We don't want to have to overthink everything because that never goes well. So we need to understand our nervous systems and the role. So anyways, that podcast that I just mentioned, the healing, holistic trauma healing, is a podcast dedicated to the understanding the nervous system. And she even has a quiz. That's what I put in the Facebook group for you guys. She has a quiz on how to figure out what your stress response is, whether it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And it's pretty interesting to read about. She's like a little ebook that you can download that talks a lot about this. All right, let's see if I can get this comment to work. Where'd it go? Nope, I don't know. Not sure where it went. Anyways, all right, ladies. I think that's it for today. But like I said, if anything comes up where you have more questions, or if you have ideas for next month's topic, feel free to put it in the group. And other than that, it's been awesome hanging out with all of you. So thanks for stopping by. And for those of you on the replay, thanks for listening in when you do.